Hey guys, this is Sean Klinger and former professional racer Steve Boniface with Vital MX. We are at Fox Raceway looking at the 2020 KTM 450 SXF. Very similar to the Husky that we rode last week. There's a new piston that has a slightly different coating for durability purposes. The suspension is even more similar to their factory edition, but they did change the mid piston in the fork. There's a slightly different shape to it to help with some suction issues, to help it move a little smoother. Looking at the rear shock, it retains the 4.5 spring rate. They didn't drop down to the lower spring rate like the Husky. And then with the mapping, they did a similar thing that the map 1 is kind of a stock, kind of a standard map, where map 2 is supposed to be more aggressive both on bottom and on top, kind of across the board, the racier map. What I found kind of interesting overall was where the Husky's kind of diverging away from their Rockstar edition. You know, they create a Rockstar edition that's like the racy, the premium level bike, and then their 2020 bike is kind of almost like I don't want to call it a vet bike, but it's more of a everyman's bike. Whereas it seems like this year KTM has done what they normally do, which is come out with a factory edition, and then the next model year, which is the 2020, it kind of takes a lot of the same things they did on the factory edition and brings it to the standard production unit. We'll start talking about the maps a little bit. I like both maps today. I felt like map 1 was smoother, mellower, linear power, and but I almost felt like it was a little bit even mellower than the Husky map, the standard map. And then map 2, I found myself riding in a lot more today because it was more snappy and it was a little more fun, but it wasn't uncontrollable. It was still, I can control it pretty well on the vet track that I was riding there. What did you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think like the two maps are very different. With map 1 being like really smooth, usable power, and map 2 being like a lot torquier, a lot stronger, coming out like the power's coming out like a lot faster and harder. It's like it's hitting you. I find myself using more map 1 most of the time, just because like I like the fact that I can control the bike, like maybe ride a little more aggressive, use the clutch a little more, and but in the same time, what I like about the two maps, it's like you can really notice like the difference between map 1 and map 2, where usually it's like you're like, yeah, like it's a little different, but it's like you don't even know if it's like more in your head, or you know, like from the number you're seeing on the thing. Where actually like on the KTM, you can really notice like map 1, 2, map 2.
Yeah, to that point, I think it's almost, you have two different situations that you can ride the bike. If it's super deep, you can go to map 2 and you need that quick acceleration. If it's super dry and hard packed, maybe map 1 for better traction. And
yeah, I agree. And plus, like what's good about the mapping on the KTM is like you can change as you ride. I mean, you don't need to be neutral, or you don't need to have the bike like idle or anything. You can just change it as you ride. So.
Yeah. So now talking about suspension, I found it's kind of funny with the Husky that we rode last week. I went a little stiffer and then liked it actually better going back to stock. I did almost the opposite today with the fork. With this bike, I went a little softer because I felt like I was a little choppered out and I kind of wanted the front end to settle more in turns. But then I went high speed, increased the high speed in the shock. That helped bring the back up. And then I went back to stock to bring the fork to balance out. So the stock settings worked really well for me. Did you make any changes?
I did make changes, but I think and I agree that the stock settings are fairly good on the bike. I was pretty comfortable and I felt good on the bike right away. You know, like then I came in and we did like few changes. Like it was a little soft for me. Like there is some big jumps here and like really high speed track. So I needed like little stiffer both front and rear, and I felt like it really helped the bike. It wasn't big changes, it was just like really like, I think we went like maybe 2 or 3 clicks on a compression in the front and maybe a quarter or half a turn on a high speed in the back, and also slow down the rebound a little bit.
Yeah, and I also find it a little interesting that it's like the overall, I would say the suspension kind of feels a little more racy, a little more firm. But the air pressure setting stock is 10.5 bar, which is actually a little bit lower than what the Husky is. But also talking to the engineers here from KTM, the internal valving settings are completely different, so they made sure that there's a whole different setup in there. So as far as handling goes, I felt the faster I went, the easier it was to get it to turn the way I wanted to turn. When I found myself kind of hesitating and downshifting too much and braking too much, then I found it wasn't working for me very well. But when I just let the bike flow a little more, I could kind of hit inside, outside. I was more comfortable.
Yeah, I also felt better on a KTM than what I did on the Husky last week. I mean, obviously, like they are similar bike, but they're actually like a lot different when you ride them. And right away, like from the first few laps on the track, I felt a lot better, a lot more myself on the KTM than I felt on the Husky, and I had a lot more fun today riding the bike.
So some of the fit and finish on the KTM are always great. Great brakes, great clutch. Didn't have any issues there. I would say the only real kind of con was at the very bottom of the stroke. I noticed that you get down to the very end, and I blew through that kind of quickly, where if I remember from like last year riding like the Yamaha, it seemed like there's kind of this endless bottoming resistance. Like you can overjump anything, and no matter what, you're gonna brace yourself, and then you still have some plushness at the bottom. I would say overall I like the action of the suspension, but towards the bottom, I did clank metal to metal when I overjumped a jump. So overall, we really enjoyed the KTM 450 today. It was actually really cool to be able to ride KTM versus the Husky within a week of each other. We're excited to ride it with the other bikes in the shootout. And if you like this video, click subscribe on our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.